In the last two videos, we talked about when to have the talk with your kids as far as what it is they want to do with their lives, and also the different perspectives that you bring to the talk when you come together as a parent and child trying to figure out what it is that they should be doing. Today I want to talk about the talk itself and the fact that the relationship between the parent and the child actually changes when you get into the room and come to the point where we have to make a decision about what's coming up next. Now, normally in most parent-child conversations, you have the authoritarian figure and you have the non-authoritarian figure. You have the plebe, if you will, attempting to come to the authoritarian figure with an idea, asking for permission to do something. In this case, the dynamic changes quite a bit because the young person is not so young anymore. In fact, they're 18 perhaps, and they're thinking about going to college, and they're thinking about living life on their own. They're thinking about moving out. They're thinking about moving on with another step in their lives. And maybe you're thinking about living at home, but still, the next chapter of their lives is theirs. And what happens is you have a different dynamic between parent and child. Instead of parent and child, you have essentially two people at two different seats. If you can imagine a dinner table, where at one end you have the chair of enthusiasm. In other words, this is the chair of the person that has a great deal of enthusiasm for what's coming up next. They have a great deal of energy, they have a great deal of passion for what's coming up. Then on the other side, you have the chair of experience. In other words, those individuals or that one person that has been around the block a few times, that knows what's coming up and knows what's easy and what's difficult and what's problematic, what is practical, and what is in their minds best for the young person there as well. The issue here when it comes to especially a decision about college and especially a decision about an expensive college is that we no longer have the parent-child relationship. You know, it's not every day that the child comes up to the parent and says, "Hey, can I borrow a couple $100,000 and go live life, financially independent at this big, tremendous, expensive 4-year university?" That doesn't happen every day. This is not an everyday occurrence within that social dynamic within the family. So what is this relationship? Well, if you take a look at it from a financial perspective, you're looking at it more so from a kind of loan officer, loan applicant perspective. In other words, you've got the loan applicant here, the person with the enthusiasm, they've got big ideas, they want to do something, they need funding. You've got the loan officer here who has the experience. They know that what works in the past will probably work in the future, and they have a good idea of how they want to spend their money and invest their money in people to make a profit off of that person or to make a profitable agreement between the two. And so now we have this different dynamic where you have the loan applicant has to come to the loan officer with more than just a plea. There's got to be some sort of a plan here. There's got to be some sort of an idea of what's going to happen for the loan officer to come up with their checkbook and say, "All right, I'm willing to sign off on that." Now, within that relationship, again, you've also got the idea of compromise. In other words, you have the young person on this side saying, "I want to do this, this, and this." And you've got the elder person on the other side saying, "You should do this, this, and this." And now we have to come to the point where the rubber has to meet the road. And either the young person is going to get their wish or the old person is not going to hand out the money. So we got to come to some sort of compromise. In other words, we start like this, with both hands essentially extended in the same direction but not touching. In other words, going straight up and eventually not touching anything at all. What we have to come to the conclusion of is that both of them have to come to some sort of compromise, some sort of negotiation where they both come back down toward each other. In other words, the enthusiasm is tempered a little bit because it's going to come with conditions. And the loan officer has to temper their experience and say, "Okay, I'm willing to take a little bit of a risk here on this particular person in order to achieve what I believe is a profitable relationship." So how does this have to come about? Well, one reason, of course, is that with any, say for instance, small business, they go to a loan officer with a business plan. with an idea of this is what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do from point 1 to point 2 to point 3 to point 4 to point 5. Here's how I'm going to use the money. Here's how I'm going to utilize the funds. And this is what the overall goal is. This is the time frame I expect to achieve this. You get the idea. Well, the same thing can be said of the loan applicant in terms of the high school graduate that's about to go off to college, or again, looking for that particular funding they need for whatever the next step is in life. They can provide a program, a plan of what it is that they're going to be doing. And that's one of the things that the Dream Job Blueprint does for you, is that if you can fill it out, you eventually get to a success blueprint. In other words, here's where I am, here's where I'm going, and these are the steps that I want to get there. In other words, this particular education that I have selected is necessary, maybe even required, for me to achieve the career that I want to go to. And that should be put together in a presentation, which not only includes the fact that, yes, it might be required, but come back with also references in terms of, you've talked to people in the young person that is, they've talked to people in the industry that say, yeah, you need a 4-year degree for this, or yeah, you need to go to engineering school, or yes, you need to at least get a 2-year degree or go to a trade school of some sort in order to be qualified right out of school for this particular career. So that's a way for them to do the research, for them to come back and say, here's what I've done. And it also gives the loan officer the opportunity to go, okay, I see this, I see this, I see this, but your point here is I'm not sure. You can ask them to go back and fill in the blanks. You can ask them to make this a much more cohesive plan and say, you know, I agree with this, I agree, but the job prospects here I don't think are very good. Can you go back and explain this and see what your chances are of you having getting a job directly after attaining this particular degree or certification, whatever that may be. So when it comes to this particular conversation, you're looking at the loan officer and the loan applicant. And one of the reasons that it's important to consider this in that kind of relationship, especially when you're talking about a financial arrangement being made, is that the enthusiasm is all here. The money is all over here. And this can become a very abrasive relationship when this person over here looks at the money, or looks at the elder generation or the loan officer and says, you know, if you love me, you support me. And that's a tough nut to crack for an older person that is looking upon their son or daughter and thinking, yeah, but in this particular case, you know, I love you very much. I love you unconditionally. I love you all the days of my life. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to support everything you do. And of course, then it can reach back to that awful statement where you might say, well, if you love me, you support me. And that's not always going to be the case. But the question is, and this is what parents have to realize as well, is that even if you say no, they're still in the chair of enthusiasm. They still have the want to do what they want to do. And they may have your love, and they may not have your support, but that gives them the opportunity to go look for support elsewhere. And so that's one of the things that you have to worry about as a parent, and the fact that they may really, really want to do this, but you've got to be able to convince them to come across with some of the practical ways, especially if it's something that you're not any familiar with. Maybe things that you have to do research about in order to understand the industry that they want to go into. So that's very important, because you want their love and you want their respect, but at the same time, you've got to give them an opportunity to do what they want to do. And if not, they're still going to do what they want to do at some point. I'm reminded of a story of a young man that went to a meeting of individuals that were interested in teaching at the local high school. They didn't have the credentials to do so, but perhaps were interested in obtaining some sort of a certification where they could go in and teach still. And it was during the meeting, the main officer of the meeting said, go around the room and identify yourself and just say what line of work you were in. And the young man said that he was a heart surgeon, which struck everyone pretty much dumbfounded because of the background that he had and the work that he had done over the course of his life. And at the end of the meeting, the officer, the main person, the host of the meeting, came up to him and said, "You're a heart surgeon. You know, why? I mean, why do you want to be a teacher? And the man said, well, I've always wanted to teach. And I guess, but you're a heart surgeon. You know, you save people's lives. You go into the operating room and you give them life where there was none. I can imagine there could be nothing more rewarding than that. And the young man went on to explain that his mother wanted him to be a heart surgeon. His mother always wanted him to be a heart surgeon. And that was the goal. And there wasn't going to be anything else. And so he became a heart surgeon. And so the guy said, well, why did you decide to come to this meeting here tonight? And the young man said, because Mom died on Sunday. And now I can do what I want. That's the dynamic that we're talking about here. They're still in the seat of enthusiasm. Doesn't matter what you do. They're going to do eventually what they want to do. So when we have this negotiation, give them an opportunity to be successful. And you can go through the Dream Job Blueprint or some other sort of presentation where they outline, here's how I'm going to use my funding, here's how it is I want to use my life in the next few years to give myself a chance to springboard into the career that I want. So when the dynamic is there, when the opportunity is there to come and have this seat, this chat at the dinner table with the seat of enthusiasm, the chair of enthusiasm, and the chair of experience come together, give yourself that opportunity to make sure that both of you have a chance to compromise. And where maybe their enthusiasm is tempered a little bit, maybe your ability to take on a risk is a little bit greater. And then, obviously, it's going to be a big step because the day after high school graduation, life's a wide open book. And who knows what they're going to write. So I hope that's given you some insight into how you can take on the talk and how you can be best prepared to give your son or daughter the best chance they have to succeed in life after high school. If you've enjoyed this, please give us a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, I hope things are going well for you. And a reminder again, never let your dream die before you do, and never let your children's dreams die before they do, of course. I'll see you next time.